Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded on January 17th, 2021, or December 51st, 2020. Good morning, Franklin.
Good morning, Edward. Hey, so exciting information about our channel here, or about our podcast. So I'm going to give everyone the too long did not read, because we're not going to really be going over security news. So I don't want you to waste your time if you don't want to.
Whoa, where are your manners? Happy New Year, Franklin.
Oh, really? We've talked since New Year.
I know. But our listeners and supporters haven't heard us talk since last year.
Okay. Happy New Year.
Thank you. All right, now you can go ahead.
All right. So too long did not read. So when we first started this podcast, we wanted to make it a community-based podcast. We want to interact with everyone, get everybody's thoughts about what's going on. So as the podcast has grown, there's a lot of people listening, not too many people watching on our archive on YouTube, which is fine, just as long as they're listening to the podcast. We decided to go ahead and start live streaming our recording of the podcast on Twitch. So the too long did not read for everyone is that we will be now recording the show on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we invite everyone to join us on Twitch. If you search for Microsoft Security Insights, all one word, on Twitch, you will find us. I'll also put a link in the show notes. So we invite everyone to join us so we can have fun in the community.
Yeah, I mean, this just seems like it's going to be a natural evolution of what we've been doing with the podcast. I'd like to say thank you to all of our listeners. I know Franklin was super excited and got me excited about starting a podcast, and we've seen a steady uptick in both listeners, supporters, as well as guests, where people are now asking us to come onto the show, right?
Yep.
So the Twitch thing, you're absolutely better at, the audio, video, what the kids are doing these days. And so we're going to, have that option for our supporters and listeners to watch us. So there'll be listeners and watchers.
Or participate. So there's a lot. So let's talk about why we decided to go on Twitch. And so I'm not trying to make a political statement here, what I'm about to say. We actually decided this back in December, before all of the, because obviously we're utilizing YouTube right now, before YouTube was like blocking accounts and all that other fun stuff. So we decided on Twitch for two reasons. One, I think that Twitch provides a better way for us to interact with the community while we're live streaming. We could have done LinkedIn Live, we could have done YouTube live streaming, but we decided let's focus in on one delivery channel and provide that as the best experience for people that are participating in the show. So that's one of the reasons why we went Twitch. The other reason why is that in mid-December, I actually got a notice from YouTube on one of my other channels, not my personal channel, on my company channel. I got a notice that one of my videos from 10 years ago that had 10 views that was marked as private. Basically, we're messing around trying to figure out how to put together like demo videos, right? So a video that was 10 years old, 10 views, marked as private, about SharePoint lists, was actually marked as age restricted. So why are they even looking at that video, number one? And number two, how could they consider SharePoint lists age restricted? So I had the option to go ahead and appeal, and they told me that I was fortunate enough not to have a strike against me, right? And that I could appeal it. So I'm like, I really don't want to help them with their figuring out what was wrong here, but I was really annoyed. So I went ahead and appealed it, and they got back to me and said, "You're right, this isn't age restricted." Okay. But my concern is, how could they get that so wrong? And with them aggressively deleting and removing things, and the fact that we're talking about hacker content, In cybersecurity, I was very concerned that we spend all this time building up a community on YouTube Live, and all of a sudden their algorithms come in and say, oh, by the way, this is age-restricted content, right? And then we end up losing all the effort that we put in place. So I feel that Twitch is actually a safer investment for us than going on YouTube. And I don't think that LinkedIn Live has the community tools that are out there. And funny story is that I actually posted this on LinkedIn about the fact that that YouTube had decided that content about SharePoint lists was actually age restricted. So I said in my post, and I put a copy of the email that came out to me. I said, yes, we definitely don't want our youth learning about SharePoint lists that will ruin them for the rest of their lives. And I have to say that none of my SharePoint friends found that funny. So I've come to the conclusion that SharePoint people have no sense of humor. So I have to ask you, Edward, at Microsoft, do you guys just tell the SharePoint people jokes to watch them not laugh? I mean, it's ridiculous. So I took down the post because nobody found it funny. So that's the other reason. So I think that we could provide a more interactive community on Twitch, and also I think it's safer from the algorithms that are out there from YouTube and possibly others. So that's why I decided to focus on Twitch.
I do know some SharePoint developers, and you're right. The humor gene human gene sort of has been extracted from them, right? That's right. Especially when it seems like, everything in the background is essentially SharePoint, right? OneDrive. I would say Teams, but that's not correct. Teams is an Electron app, but it looks like it is going to be successor to SharePoint in some form or fashion. I don't have a dog in the fight, cat up a tree. I know of the story about the marking of your video age restricted, and I asked you to tell me that story again because I didn't think I heard you correctly. It is what it is. Let's go into a platform that we can go out and put out good content. Don't have to worry about arbitrary reviewers not understanding what they thought they saw or heard and marked it arbitrarily and no longer work at the company probably, right? Because what's most important is for us to get out, share information with our listeners and soon to be watchers, as well as learn. When we get comments back from our podcast petitioners or participants, I learned some stuff, right? And especially when we say something that's all, mildly incorrect. So I want to come back and say, hey, you're a little either outdated or that's not how it works. That's good for us, right? Because we're always learning. So water under the bridge, we'll keep it moving. I'm looking forward to 2021, getting an understanding of what we're going to be doing, both on this podcast and Twitch channel, as well as what we're going to be doing professionally. And then lastly, not necessarily important, but what we're going to be doing personally.
So, I mean, we're going to record on Twitch on Wednesday nights and still publish to the podcast channels on Monday, like we have always done. We're just inviting people to be part of the process of making the show.
Mm-hmm. And I must have a serious commitment because Wednesday is generally my mindless TV night, right? I get on Netflix and watch Umbrella Academy, and I get on Amazon Prime and watch all my sci-fi shows and stuff. But you and I figured out what's the least busiest day in the evening that we can consistently get together. So Wednesday is what we're going to be doing. And regardless, that this doesn't mean that the podcast proper will go away. Twitch is just going to be a medium. So if we get technical difficulties or something happens, we can always fall back to the recording of it. Hopefully we'll never have that happen. And I've already, told my wife, I was like, hey, Wednesday, don't book me to put anything together, kill any spiders, pick anything up, anything. I got to have this hour and a half every Wednesday to be able to get these things done. So she was like, okay, sure.
Now I'm excited about it. You haven't figured out the real reason why I'm doing this is so I don't have to record at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, well, You're still asleep. That's why. Hey, I slept into 8 o'clock today, 8 a.m.
And you actually went to bed late last night too. At 8:30.
No, man. Yeah, right. Haha. I went to bed last night about 11:30, which
Ah,
is late for me. Because I like to get up. Right. When I'm up at 5:30, nobody's up. You know, 6, I can get a lot of stuff done before the world comes on and waste my time. Right.
yep.
And
So
no.
we've been doing this. Well, I mean, I think we published our first ones in March, but we were actually doing test runs back in January of last year. So I kind of consider this as we've been doing this for a year.
Hmm.
And so hopefully we went from being very, very, very bad to just very, very bad at doing this. And so hopefully we're getting better over time, and hopefully we'll do the same thing with Twitch and um, become better content creators on Twitch over time. So yeah, it's been 1 year that we started this process. So it's been great. We always wanted to make sure that we try to get out one. We try, but it's not always happening. One podcast a week, and keep that moving. So I have to ask you, what are your goals for this year? Not only for the podcast, but for the professional development side.
Well, let's start off with the podcast. To be more prepared. Not to remember, oh my God, I got a podcast today, right? To make sure, the content that we sort of curate is relevant, maybe adjust it a little bit so we give people not just information, but maybe we solve more problems, with tales from the field. Hey, this is what I was out in the field doing. This is what I saw, or this is what I helped fix, or this is what I learned. So I want to make the podcast better, and better can mean so many things. I want to make sure that if you and I are investing time into it, our listeners and watchers will see that we're trying to get better, right? Nothing to be perfect. We're not cinematographers, right? We're technologists that sometimes pretend like we are business people, or sometimes pretend like we know what we're talking about, right? So that's one thing. I want the podcast just to get better. And we're spending time and money. We're gonna get, I got a light here, so my bald head is not shining when we get on video, right? So that's that. Um, from a professional standpoint, um, I'm going to get smart this year. And my wife sort of looked at me, what does that mean? I'm like, I do my job well, but because I've been so busy, when was the last time I learned something from the sake of just learning it, right? I can do things, but I said, I'm going to pick up a new skill. And not because I want to change careers or want to try to apply that for income, but I'm a lifetime learner, as I told my kids. My kids would come in and see me reading Stephen Hawking's and reading war, biographies and stuff. And I believe changing the way you ingest data helps your brain. I'm not getting any younger. So I think I'm going to really double down on perfecting and honing my Python. And then I think I'm going to teach myself Golang, right? Not at an expert level, but I'm starting to see a lot of application development around the Go language, which is a Google language developed in 2001, 2002, something like that. And we'll see how that goes. And maybe, pick up another security, touch point, right? Because we can get so bogged down in what we do. I think one of my mentors, she told me, your job will kill your career, right? Because your job is only focused on what you are being compensated for to help whomever is paying you to make more money. But that doesn't necessarily mean that is in line to your professional growth, right? So those are the two things. I want to improve the podcast, visibly get better, and I want to get smarter, which means I'm going to grab a skill that maybe can enhance my career, but not necessarily is part of my career. Um, Personally, this is a two-parter here. I want to give thanks to 2020 for teaching me some stuff, right? I'm a big runner, right? I'm a marathoner. And 2020 was the first year I went with absolutely no injuries last year, no major injuries. Now, a lot of that is because I didn't put the training in because there were no races to run. But it also taught me how to take care of myself better, right? Being at home, I I'm a big cook, so I cooked better. I ate better, but the biggest thing is I took care of myself, right? I'm older. I can't run like I did in my 20s and 30s. So you have to do better maintenance when you're putting these, 10, 12, 15-mile runs in, right? I would just run 10, 12 miles, come home, shower, and then go do something without actually hydrating and stretching and all this other stuff. But I'm grateful that 2020, I was virtually injury free. Now, I don't know what this is going to turn into this year. I probably won't run a marathon this year, but I think I'm going to train as such, right? So those are the things. And one other, much, much less materialistic. I I like gadgets, but I have enough gadgets, right? I like technology, but I haven't even consumed all the technology that I purchased. Now, I'm a big traveler, and sometimes you exchange one thing to another vice. And because my wife and I haven't been able to get out and go around the world, we moved into a new home, which is probably one of the last big purchases I'll make in this lifetime, unless something else happens. But to go out and buy another laptop unless one has already failed, to go out and buy another camera unless it's failed, to go out and buy anything unless it's failed or it just doesn't do the job, that is done. This is all about getting ready so that when the world opens back up, we can get back out and do the things that we love, which is people, culture, eating, eating. Uh, those are my things for 2021. What about you, sir?
So on the personal side, I know that you're exercising, training, all that stuff. I myself, I have about 1,000-hour backlog of Xbox games that I want to play. So that's my goal is to get through those 1,000 hours. So just to let you know. Okay. So no, seriously, obviously, moving to Twitch, there's a lot of things that we want to mature and make it a great environment. So that's really my focus for the podcast, is to create a great community on Twitch for people that want to participate in that, while still upping the level of content for the podcast. I mean, that's really one of my goals for the year. The second thing is I'm very excited about where the Microsoft security technology is going. So I think that we are going to have a lot to talk about with that in the upcoming year. So I'm very excited to be involved with that. Grateful for the opportunity to be involved with that. I have been waiting to get certain contracts over with before I can sign up for an not an OSCP, but an offensive security course, a new course that came out. I'm already OSCP, but I'm going to be signing up for the OSEP, or the PEN 300, which is the evasion techniques and breaching defenses, which is more client side, attacks and so on. Because I think that, first of all, I have fun doing that, but then also it helps me understand how the defensive technology that Microsoft has, how that could possibly be being invaded, and how I can up my game at teaching these Microsoft technologies, security technologies, to catch those sort of attacks. I have probably 3 offensive security courses I want to take this year. I'm hopefully going to do at least 1, hopefully 2, to get that through. But definitely the client side host attacks I'm most interested in, because it's much more related to what I'm doing and training on from there. So that's in, of course, get my kids through their whole schooling thing and see where we're at in September.
Yeah, and these are things we've been working on. Like, this is not net new for us, right? But I want to be more disciplined next year too. I'm I fancy myself a proprietor of good advice and sage little statements, like a like a Yogi Bear, right? He said some of the funniest stuff, but I wasn't really good at adhering to the advice that I would give out, right? I mentor to a lot of up and coming young technologists. I sit on a few boards, and people would love some of the ideas and stuff that I give. Then I realized I was being a hypocrite. I wasn't really following some of the things. So one of the things I told someone, I say, well, the secret to not having too much on your plate is to get a smaller plate. And so I'm going to really stop being, and I coined this term for myself about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I'm a habitual overcommitter, right? And so I'm going to be closing out stuff this year, right? Finishing these projects. I don't quite have 1,000 hours of Xbox or PlayStation stuff I need to get to, but believe it or not, I do have some games on the Xbox platform that I want to play. I'm not a big, first person shooter type person. I'm a more of a science fantasy RPG. So I'm going to play some games, right? Hand-eye coordination. Probably going to pick up my guitar lessons again. I decided to get away from acoustic and go to a bass. My teacher's like, your hands are too small, right? Try the bass, right? More, and plus the way of my tone. I can't carry a tune with both hands, right? But I can, maybe something with my hearing. So I'm going to play with some of those personal things. And no midlife crisis. I'm past that point. I've had the sports cars. I've done all that. This is just 2021 gave me an appreciation. Not that I thought anything was taken from me. I think you and I can say from a business standpoint, 2020 was actually pretty good. Unfortunately, that the expense of folks who didn't understand the risk around cybersecurity, and I would say to some people, 80% of the time when I'm involved with something, it's not good. 20% is proactive, 80% is reactive. I'd like to also piggyback on what you said. I'm excited about some of the things we're going to be able to talk about that happened in 2020. That, everything from the SolarWinds exploit to new technologies, industry leaders changing what they're doing. We got a lot to do. And a lot of things we can do. How about we put it that way? A lot of things we can do. But I'll go back to it. I'm excited about the podcast, right? I want to see how this really, really takes off this year. More guests, different platform, just stuff, right?
And so most importantly, on the Xbox, have you ever played Skyrim?
Oh yeah, I came back from the Elder Scroll days. Remember?
Oh, okay, all right, just checking.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that we were talking about this before the podcast. One of the reasons why we quote unquote had a minimal impact on our careers over 2020 was how much time, even before 2020, we spent investing in ourselves and being lifelong learners. And trying to keep up with that stuff. I mean, one of the things is that 2020, there were so many people putting out so much content, so many things to attend. I had to turn off some of the stuff because it's all really great content and great events that were taking place. But, we invested in ourselves in dealing with cybersecurity and staying in there and continue. I mean, that's one of the things about this environment is that you have to constantly learn. Which is great, but it came down to investing in ourselves, and I hope everybody listening to the podcast say, "Hey, yeah, cybersecurity is a great career, but I just have to invest in myself," and that's important.
And another thing is that we helped others last year. I've had some peers in the field that wanted your advice because they wanted to start their own podcast, and you were gracious enough to lend your experience to them. And they've either reached out to you directly or to me by saying, thanks for introducing me. I never thought about this until I talked to Franklin. I'm a big charity guy. I want to give back and uplift, right? And that's more than just lip service, right? I believe that when, I'm a person of service, right? I believe the greatest thing you can do is help. And without expecting, something. And so we both, we gave back in this crazy times that we're in, and that's it. I'm looking forward to this year. I know that's, geopolitical stuff, technology stuff. There's a lot going on, but, in the grand scheme of things, I'm only whining, right? Everything else is pretty good. I got good peers in the field and comrades and friends such as yourself. And I got enough stuff that didn't go right. 2020 wasn't all roses. But you learn from those things, right? And so, yeah.
All right. So what certifications are you going after this year?
I think I'm going to try out the Sans 508 if I can
Okay.
figure out how to how to get someone to pay for it because it's expensive, right? Obviously, continue to put CPEs inside my CISSP. I renewed last year, so I'm at the beginning of my 3-year cycle. I'm good on that. The applicable Microsoft certifications that are in line to my job. I heard there are going to be some new ones coming out with new letter and focus designations. So as they come out, I will see if they apply to me, and I'll look for those. Other than that, I don't think that I'm going to really try to go out the anything else that's impactful for them. I think I told you I wanted to get smarter, so I'm going to go out and learn Python deeper, get more proficient in Linux. I sort of let my skills wane and learn Golang. Not at an expert level, but I just want to do it because once you learn one program and coding language, it's the same. If you can speak Spanish, you can pick up Portuguese.
So
right?
yeah, one of the things is that there's a lot of tests that quote unquote I've studied for, but I've never taken because I don't want to get caught into their continuing education renewal cycle, which is just a money making thing for them. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like offensive security. So once you get the cert, you've got the cert. But the good news is, and they finally made this public, is that Microsoft is changing. So there's Microsoft certs that I don't have just because I didn't want to get caught in that cycle, even though I could go out and pass the test. And so Microsoft is now changing the way that they're doing certification renewals. They finally made this public. And basically, once you get your cert will be, it used to be valid for 2 years. Then you would have to go take the test again and then pay the fee. And, it was just, even with that, I didn't want to get into. But now they're changing it. They've made this public finally that your cert will actually only be valid, I think, for a year, but you will be able to renew for free by taking a test on Learn. So now you can go out once you pay to get your cert, just as long as every year you go out and take that mini test on Learn, you're going to be able to keep your cert. So I'm much more willing now to go out and get the certifications from Microsoft that I actually put off because I didn't want to deal with that cycle. So, I mean, that's awesome news. I'm looking forward to taking those certification tests.
Yeah, I think I'm still within my renewal cycle, so I'm not so super impacted by that because of the MS 100 I've taken, the 200, the MD 100, the MS 100 101, the MD 100 101, the AZ 500, the MS 500 I've taken, both of the fundamentals, which is the AZ 900 and the MS 900. I did the SANS 555 course last year. I think if I do pursue a certification outside of the Microsoft vendor stack, it'd be a technology agnostic cert, similar to the offensive security, right? It's relevant across all platforms, right? It doesn't really get in bed to any vendor. But the Microsoft certifications are important to me because I'm a Microsoft guy. Guys, they know, but I touch a lot of other stuff, right? I have the Linux Plus certification. I needed that for, remember in the old days, you had to have the Linux Plus to be able to get the Azure Solution Architect, right? When the tests were the 70, 532, 533, and 534.
All right. So what was your first certification ever? Technical certification.
Man, golly, now you're really dating me. It's either a Novell cert or Windows NT 4.0 workstation.
Yeah,
I think it was the Novell 3.12 cert, and then the NT after that, and then I can't remember.
Right. Yeah, I have a Novell cert. I think it was from like 87, signed by Ray Norda, all that other fun stuff.
Wow.
So
yeah. I still have some of those old things. As I moved, I found all these old certificates and stuff. I found all the I found some Windows 95s, shiny CDs, a bunch of NT 4.0, like a gazillion 3.5-inch floppies. I found a 3Com switch that still worked, Bay Network stuff. That's cert. Yeah, that it had to be a Novell cert, and then an NT cert, and then I really got around switching. So every Cisco cert, HP cert. Um, I was a big wireless guy, so all the wireless companies have come and gone. One of the ones that's still around, I was a big fan of was Aruba. They're still around. They've been acquired, right?
Right. So if you can only take one cert this year, and I'm telling everyone out there that's listening to this podcast, because if they're into not the AZ500 or the MS500, but if you're in, defend, detect sort of situation, not configuration like the AZ500, I'd have to say SANS Forensics 508 is the course to take.
Especially if you're a consultant, right? Because that's a common denominator cert that's wide reaching, because the techniques and the learning is applicable to whomever you're using for endpoint, right? Whether it's Defender for Endpoint, CloudStrike, SentinelOne.
But also even in Sentinel, right? Because you're still getting that sort of data, and you're understanding the forensics raw data that you're seeing bubbled up to all of those products. And that's the important thing.
Mm-hmm. So, but there is value. Your job description really determines what you should be doing, right? There are job-related tasks and certifications you should get to show your perceived proficiency and expertise in a vendor's technology, and then there are the ones that are recognized, right? You have very recognizable certifications behind your name, meaning that it doesn't mean that you're necessarily in bed with a particular vendor, but your skills, you have a very consultative series of credentials behind your name, right? I fancy you and I as consultants, advisors, and that's what we do. Now, we still are hands on the keyboard when necessary, right? I'm not theory. If I need to get in and get my hands dirty, I can query with the best of them. I can deploy with the best of them. I can point and click with the best of them, right? But a lot of times, as I said, when you and I are contacted, 80% of the time is not good, right? Something's happened, and SolarWinds was a big part of that. Hey, I got to tell you something. I think I can say this on the podcast, and if not, we'll edit it out.
On Twitch, you won't be able to do that anymore.
Yeah, I know. And I got to get used to making sure I put a buffer between my brain and mouth, right?
Yeah, people don't realize how much I have to edit out NDA stuff and also your dad jokes.
Yeah, my dad jokes, yeah. So I don't know if I said this on a prior podcast. I'm taking a little bit of a tangent here, and well, hold on. Let me go back. I think I answered your question. Any of the SANS courses, specifically the 508, is going to help you if you are having to do anything with threat detection, threat prevention, and stuff like that. Even if you're a pen tester, understanding, right? From a Microsoft side, choose your poison. Cisco side, choose whatever you do for a living, right? What about you? And if you had to take one, like I know what you were saying you're getting ready to, if you had to take one and advise our listeners, which one would you take? Same thing, 508?
No, so if I had no certifications today, right, which one would I take? By far would still be Forensics 508. So I think that from a career development standpoint, knowledge across the board, it's the one that provides the most value from your understanding of what's going on, and also from recognition in dealing, especially on the government job side.
Well, that we really have to look at this a different way, right? Your son is an up and coming superstar when it comes to the world of technology, right? My boys don't do it. They do different things, even though they have the capability. But I mentor to individuals, and they have finished college. One of the individuals, he's an up and coming data scientist type of guy, machine learning, and others. But one thing we have to be very careful is that we are making recommendations based on our past capability and experience, and not everybody may be that, because that 508 exam is not an entry-level exam.
I completely agree, but you can take it without, if you do so it's an expensive, endeavor, so you better take it serious. and prep for the class, and then pay attention in class. Like I said, it was in DC for me. I actually paid, even though I could have commuted there, I actually paid to get a hotel to stay at the event so I could focus on the course, not focus on the traffic getting to and from the course. So you have to take it very serious and invest in yourself. The other thing is even when you take a look at the Microsoft certifications, right? I actually normally only take the certs that I'm going to be able to teach in. But I have to say, well, first of all, I have to say this. I try to learn as much as I can about security and Azure and everything like that. So I can, I only have so much room to actually store learning knowledge. So the more that I learn over there in security and Azure, the more I can forget about the Power Platform, which makes me happy. So if people know me, they understand that.
And to take a shot at the Power Automate, the Power Platform. Power Automate.
Honestly, I actually spend a lot of time over in Twitch in the technology and security. A lot of people go out there and study for different certifications. So I just happen to find them and I'll talk to them and, point them in the right direction on things and so on under a different name. They don't know that it's actually me doing that. So I'd have to say that I would, out of all the certs, I would actually go after the Azure Architect. Was it 303, 304? That's where I would spend my time if I was actually new or deciding on which Microsoft certs to take. That's where I would go.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think I'm going to add that. I thought about that, but I spend a lot of time in Azure just by osmosis, right? I do a lot of Sentinels on Azure. I think I'm going to go after those two. The 303 and 304, the 301 and something like that. I want to add those to it because there are a lot of gaps in my knowledge around the Azure platform. I learned a lot of bad habits and bad deployment stuff because you think about it, it's just massive, right? Everything from Azure policy to Azure blueprints. I work in Lighthouse. I'm doing Azure Data Explorer. I got pulled into a Kubernetes conversation and a bunch of container discussions. And so I want to go back and be very task oriented and learning focused. And the easiest way to make sure, in my opinion, that you're not Easter egging is that am I studying something that's going to help me write the exam? And for those, that's how the old schools used to say, not take the exam, go write the exam, right? And then you finish, you pass, right? So I'm going to go do that. I think I'm going to add that to it because I
see people taking like the Azure admin or whatever. I'm like, no, don't waste your time. Just go and do 303, 304, because that's going to carry more weight on your resume. And it's going to just be I think a stronger cert for people to have. I know I could probably go and take the test, but I've actually held off because I didn't want to get into that whole renewal, the whole renewal game. So I will probably look at taking that. I have to deal with some other Azure-based technology right now for some contracts, and I feel that for me, the offensive security is the cert that I want to focus into first. But yeah, the Azure, maybe that's some of the things that we can do on upcoming Twitch is that we can have some study groups and all that other fun stuff to move that forward. So it all matters what the community wants. Yeah, we're willing to invest the time to make this stuff happen. You just have to say, yes, we want this. We're going to participate and we'll do it.
And we're men of the people. If you ask within reason, we'll help out. But, once again, I'm going to go back. I will not be a habitual overcommitter. All right. There's only so much, that we can take on, and every request won't be granted. But if we find a common denominator and a common ask, and we believe that we can help someone, we'll go that route. Especially, one of the big things I like watching is like Formula One. To see how focused they are. Their whole goal is to make the car go faster. Yep. Right? Not paint, unless the paint makes the car go faster. Not tires.
So, one of the things that we always said about this podcast is we want to make sure that it was fun, educational, but it's not our job. You know what I mean? And so we're willing to do these things as long as it doesn't end up becoming our job.
Mhm.
Um,
And the podcast will evolve. I mean, you and I may not always be the only two hosts, right? If we find a friend of the show, if God forbid you take a vacation and you leave me here.
I mean, so here's the thing. I mean, honestly, some of these certifications, I'm actually not allowed to run um, specific certification prep related courses. I can train the courses and go through that process through the official MCT thing, but I also do have some other restrictions about doing test prep related courses. So other people will just have to simply do that.
Yeah, well, we'll figure it out. We got 51 weeks. 50. I'm sorry, we got 50 weeks, give or take, 48 weeks of putting this thing together. Right? I'm looking at my calendar here, so I'm trying to figure out how many weeks we got left. But uh, I'm excited, man, and um, let's do it. I know to our listeners, you probably say, "Hey, man, you guys didn't talk any security." Well, we just wanted to update you guys, let her know that we took 2 weeks off toward the end of the year, maybe three, to recharge. I know you were busy, busy. I probably can't tell what you were anybody on the show what you were doing, but you were busy, busy during the holidays. I don't think you had any downtime really.
No, I won't have any downtime until maybe out to March.
Yeah, I'm ramping back up. Maybe on the next podcast, I tell everyone about my experience with the whole SolarWinds, SolarGate, Sunburst, Supernova, whatever you want to call it. I've had to curate what is actual and factual documentation about what was seen versus sensationalism in the news. But I do have a story. I saw activity of the SolarWinds exploit in the wild the 1st of November. I can't mention the customer name, and we did not know what we were seeing. Come to find out, that's what it was. So I'll give you the post-mortem.
What a tease you are.
Well, I think I told you, right? And I'm like, we didn't know what it was. I got pulled in for an IR because of the technology that alerted. I won't mention the technology either um, until maybe the next show. But the technology was showing activity that was the result of the exploit. And then once I got pulled back into it, I saw and they confirmed, yes, what you saw was the result of this. And now they're in full short for remediation and trying to get it done. But kudos to Microsoft for being one of the front runners in the industry about this thing that has happened with SolarWinds. And SolarWinds is one of my favorite companies, right?
All right. So one more thing, and then so we can throw in a few bits of security here. Here's my question to you, and once again, not trying to be political, right? But on the Capitol situation, where people just got up and left their machines there, and people were running through. What do you do? So there's a lot of talk on Twitter about what to do about those machines. Do you consider them compromised? I mean, what do you do? I mean, are people throwing things on network ports? I mean, how do you deal with that situation from a cybersecurity standpoint,
okay.
not from a political standpoint?
Not political. Okay. You know many more people in that whole federal government space by virtue of what you do and where you live. I am because I cover that space. So let me give you my opinion on this. Someone asked me about this. First of all, the Capitol is a crime scene. Can we agree?
Sure.
It's a crime scene. It's a cybersecurity IR incident that is ongoing. I am not in the know to understand exactly, but it was a great opportunity for a skilled perpetrator in the cybersecurity arena to try something. What you are going to find out is whether adequate controls were in place from unauthorized devices on the network, whether some type of NAC, air gapping between applicable networks, any of that is in place. That's number one. Number two, if there are machines there that were not stolen, but someone attempted to plug in a USB to copy data, you're going to look at your data governance DLP capability, whether it's present, not present, or inadequate, right? So you're looking at in-place assets that may have been compromised but left in place either from data theft. I tell you what, let's say this as a topic. Let's talk about that and then talk about that a little bit, and then maybe grab a couple of news items about new technologies. But that's a very good question, because I didn't even touch on. And the only thing I really looked at or heard about was, I think maybe somebody from Nancy Pelosi's had an office that had a laptop that was taken, but someone said it was only marketing stuff and presentation use.
Yeah, but can't they just throw a device on the network and then just walk out of there? I mean,
well, let's talk about it on the show. Because
I mean, what do you do with that? What do you do with that environment? Number one. The number two, what controls could have been in place to say, okay, this physical location is now breached. How do we? What control with Microsoft security products could be in place to then protect that information and how to handle that? I mean, I think it's a fascinating case study to look into.
Yeah, I think you're right, because this is a case study of where the technology stack and defense in depth comes into place, where you may have non-existent security controls for a specific threat vector and how it can be shored up because you're rock solid in another area. The number one thing is this.
I can only guess that, like, you have to say, okay, do we disable these accounts, but these people still need to work? They had to go back into work that night. I mean, how, where's that line?
Do you realize that all of the Congress people in the House are responsible for their own IT? Each one of them has their own IT support mechanism. It is not uniform. I mean, Nancy has her different person. Any other representative has their different person. There's no uniformity in the IT support mechanism. I did not know that.
I didn't know that. Was that published out there that that's the case?
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. This is not me speculating. This is known. There is no uniform IT support mechanism for that. For those individuals, they are in charge of their own IT. They're not all on the same U.S. Congress phone plan either.
Interesting.
Right. So
yeah, it's something that we can look.
It's a huge case study for those who want to understand. The other thing is, there was so much emphasis placed on the physical altercation and the violence around that, but you and I operate. Cybersecurity people looking at this in a totally different, not a different way. We're looking at it in an additional lens, because that's a crime scene. And then people are able to plug into this thing. You have to air gap that place. And you have to then put some type of mechanism in that any and all traffic leaving that place, I could care less what's coming in. What's leaving that place? I need to see exactly what's calling home. Are there any C2s? Are there any unauthorized, exit of data leaving that facility? Every circuit should have been turned off. If you have internet connectivity, you have audio, video, you have television, any and all electronic forms of communication should have been zeroed out there. And then something.
They still need to work. All right. So this is a topic for another podcast. So we can
and career is going to be at stake, especially if you were in charge.
Well, I mean, they are. So the security people, the sergeant at arms, are all, they've all retired. And
no, not physical security. Information technology. Well, let's talk about it on the show. I'll come down with my, I don't know, top 5-6 things that I believe are vibrant or real threats until they've been proven out otherwise, and then we'll talk about how Microsoft technologies could have helped that and what things. But if I had to give a teaser for the next show, if you say, Ed, how could you reasonably? Well, let's talk about it on the show. I have some ideas. I'll write them on my board.
I have to say, I'll be thrilled if we actually have 5 people watching us on Twitch on our next show on Wednesday night.
Well, they get to hear me though.
Just to get things started. So
help me understand this though. our podcast distribution still going to be the same?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just what we're doing right now, recording,
Mhm.
is going to be done on Twitch so we can interact with the community.
Maybe we give prizes for those who come onto our Twitch channel can then tell us what hat Ed had on.
You
Right.
know, there's a lot of interactivity things that we can do on Twitch, and I'm learning about them, and you know that's we'll definitely be doing that, but we have to crawl before we run here. So
You're talking to a marathoner. Slow and steady wins the race. Slow and steady. Hey,
so
well, let's call it a day, man. It's lunchtime for me down here. I promised the wife I wouldn't work today, and you know, we're gonna celebrate MLK Day and hopefully take some of the tenets and understanding of what it means to get along. Hopefully it manifests. I'm in a better place, but I know a lot of people are not in a good place, no matter what side of the aisle that you're on. We need some sanity, just for a little while, right? Because I know the world is turbulent, but just let me have some normal for a little while and bank it, and then I can push through, right?
all right, sir.
And let's do it. I'm ready to get away from depressing talk and get the technology talk that makes us super excited.
It's funny, we're not going to go political, but the first night that we'll be streaming on Twitch will be Inauguration Day. So
Do we watch the inauguration while we Twitch?
there you go.
What time's inauguration?
Oh, I have no clue.
I have no clue, man. I know it happens that day, right? But
all right, until Wednesday night.
Until Wednesday night. It's on my board of life. That means it will happen.
All right, until then.
Until then.